Hey CMA buddies. Today let's start with OM and SM. OM and SM is what? OM and SM is Operation Management and Strategic Management. I'll be concentrating more on strategic management, which is completely theory and covers 40 marks in all, or rather 40% of this entire subject. Right. So I guess if you do this video, or rather follow this video, you should be able to score a decent score of around, if not much, then around 30 to 32. So let's start with the topic right away. Let's start with 8.1, and 8.1 is nothing but it simply talks about introduction to strategy and strategic management, right? So let's understand first of all what exactly is strategy, right? Okay, strategy is what? Strategy is basically a set of goal-focused action taken by a firm to gain and sustain superior performance in comparison to competitors, right? So what did it say? Let's break it down. It says it's a set of goal-focused action. Goal-focused action means you have an objective in mind and you're trying to attain that, right? Who takes it? It is being taken by whom? It is taken by a firm. For what? For gaining and sustaining superior performance. That means you intend to do well in the market. With respect to whom? With respect to the competitors that they are in the market, right? For example, let's take a soap example. There are many soaps in market. It can be Dove, it can be Lux, or it can be Santoor, right? So you as an organization, what exactly steps you are taking? For example, your company say that of a Dove, right? So what exactly you're doing to grow your market with respect to the other soaps that are available in the market, right? So basically you're trying to attain an advantage over your competitors, right? By doing what? By focusing on certain goals, right? So there's basically a goal focused action taken by a firm, right? For what? For gaining and sustaining superior performance as compared to the competitors. That's what it says. To ensure that the superior performance is attained, firms usually compete for resources, right? Because we all know resources are very limited in nature, right? So what's the first and foremost thing that a company should do? They should basically target the resources that are available, and that's where they get an advantage or an edge. So basically, to ensure that they attain a superior performance, firms usually compete for the resources, right? Okay, now basically strategy consists of three elements, right? So what are these three elements? It's D, J, G and C. DGC, that's how I easily find it, like I find it easy to remember. It's DGC. So if it says three elements of strategy, you can say DGC. What exactly is DGC? First of all, it says diagnosis of competitive challenge, right? What is diagnosis? Diagnosis is nothing but identification, right? You diagnose a disease. So you basically identify a disease. So identification of anything is basically called as a diagnosis. So what do you diagnose in case of strategy? You first of all diagnose what is the competitive challenges that a company has, right? Secondly, you talk about G. G is what? Guiding policy to address the competitive challenge. So what policy have you developed as a company which is called as a guiding policy, right? For what? For addressing the competitive challenge. And finally, C. C is what? Coherent actions. Coherent is what? Coherent simply means some logical actions. Coherent means what? Coherent means some logical action. What logical actions have you taken to implement firm's guiding policy? So the guiding policy that you spoke in point number 2, what actions have you taken to implement the firm's guiding policy? That's what is coherent actions, or point 3 is, right? So let's quickly revise. It talks about three elements. Three elements of what? Three elements of strategy. What are they? You remember it as DGC. First one is diagnosis. Diagnosis is what? Identification of the competitive challenge. Secondly, it talks about what? Guiding policy to address the competitive challenge. And again, with reference to this guiding policy, what do? We take coherent actions to implement these firms' guiding policy, right? Okay, just moving on. The next topic is why competitive advantage of a firms carry so much of weightage. So if a question asks you why competitive advantage is so important from a firm's perspective, you need to understand that, right? So what exactly is competitive advantage? First of all, you need to know competitive advantage of the firm is always relative and not absolute. Relative means what? Relative means something which is comparable, that you can compare, right? And not absolute. Absolute is absolute is nothing but the total. How do you understand this? Now, for example, we took example of 3 soaps, right? Now, how do you know whether the performances of Dove with respect to Lux and Santoor is good or not? You can only know by comparing it, right? For example, you can look at their revenues. Now, revenue of Dove, if it is higher than that of Lux and Santur in a particular quarter or a year, that shows that you have a competitive advantage over them, right? But simply if you take only the data for Dove, then it doesn't tell you anything as such. So it may be an absolute number, but what has it done with respect to the competitors, right? So unless and until you compare the both, you will never get to know what exactly a competitive advantage an organization is basically enjoying or carrying with it, right? So first of all, the competitive advantage of the firm basically is always relative and it is not absolute. Then the second thing is competitive advantage assessment. You have to do an assessment of that. How do you do? Compares firm's performance to the benchmark. That is either with the performance of other firms in the same industry or an industry average. Very much, right? As we already discussed, let's take some other example. Let's say we have 3 cold drinks. Say it is basically Coke, you have Pepsi, and you have Sprite. Maybe few of the companies are from the same organization, but just for the comparison purpose I'm taking. Now, for example, you take that of Coke. You have a benchmark, right? What Coke's benchmark is that it is comparing to both Pepsi and Sprite. Now, for example, Pepsi in last quarter or last year, they have made say 100 crore of sale, and Sprite has made some 250 crore of sale, right? So that becomes a benchmark for them. So Coke has to ensure that their sales is higher than that of Pepsi and Sprite with respect to the last year, right? Or basically you can take the average of both, that is 250 plus 100 divided by 2, that is 350 by 2. So almost like 175 you have. So your benchmark is comparable to the 175 crores, which is the industry average, right? So basically, how do you know the competitive advantage assessment? You compare the firm's performance to the benchmark. Now, what can be these benchmarks? Either with the performance of the other firms in the same industry or the industry average. Fine, 2 things. Now, let's move on to the third one. 2 things that you need to understand. First of all, what is a competitive advantage and what is a competitive disadvantage? Let's focus on competitive advantage first. Firm's superior performance is attained relative to other competitors in the same industry or the industry average. Such firms are said to have competitive advantage. That's what we discussed in the above 2 points also. So if basically a firm's superior performance is attained, how? Which is relative to other competitors in the same industry or industry advantage, then that is said to have a competitive advantage. Opposite of that will be what? Firm's underperformance with its rivals or industry average, then it is called as competitive disadvantage. So if it's a good performance or a superior performance, then you term it as what? Competitive advantage. But if it is an underperformance, then you say it is basically a competitive disadvantage. Right? I guess you understand. Then 2 or more firms that perform at the same level have competitive parity. Right? What do you mean by parity? Parity means equality, or rather you can even say uniformity. So basically, if you have 2 companies of the same level, say Pepsi and Coke, right? They are said to have a competitive parity. That means 2 or more firms that perform at the same level. They both are performing at the same level. That means they have a level playing field. Then that is said to they are said to have a competitive parity, right? And finally, effective strategy. Okay, what is the effective strategy? Requires that strategic trade-offs. Okay, requires that strategic trade-offs. What do you mean by strategic trade-offs? Giving up on one thing to gain another, right? Let's understand it in a better way. That should be recognized and addressed. Okay, now let's understand what exactly strategic trade-off with an example between value creation and the cost to create a value. That means, for example, if Coke intends to produce a new drink, say drink X, fine. Now this drink X, if I spend money on this, that is the cost if I incur, will it be more profitable, or if I don't do it or cut down the cost on Coke itself, will that be more profitable for me? So that is called a strategic trade-off, right? Do you understand that? If I create the value of this drink, whether that would be a better play for me, or if I incur a cost on this, or rather reduce the cost on the existing Coke, will that be better for me? So that's what is called a strategic trade-off. So let's understand effective strategy. It says requires that strategic trade-offs be recognized and addressed. So example can be between value creation. So when you create a new drink, that's a value creation, and the cost to create that value. So you need to see which one is better. Whether creating a new drink will be beneficial for you, or the cost to create will be more hampering. So you need to compare the both. Whichever is better, you need to adopt that strategy. So that is giving up one thing to gain another. So that is what is basically a strategic trade-off is. Fine. So let's quickly revise what we did in terms of competitive advantage. Competitive advantage of the firms carry so much of weightage. Why it does carry so much of weightage? Because First of all, it is always relative and not absolute, right? Secondly, it says you have to compare the firm's performance to the benchmark. This is called as competitive advantage assessment, right? So either you compare it with the same industry, a performance of the firm with the same industry, or the industry average. Then firm superior performance is attained relative to other competitors in the same industry or industry average. That is called as what? It is called as a competitive advantage. If it's an underperformance with respect to its rivals or industry average, then it is called as competitive disadvantage. Now, two or more firms that perform at the same level have the competitive parity. Parity is not but nothing equality. And finally, effective strategy. That means you require that there is a strategic trade-off. That is giving up one thing to the another. That should be recognized and addressed. Example can be between value creation and the cost to create value, right? Okay. Please remember, more than the trade-offs, strategy is all about deciding what not to do as it is about deciding what to do. So both things are very, very important when you talk about trade-offs. It's not just about doing something new, it's about not even something new, that is also basically a kind of trade-off. So you need to remember this point, right? So more than trade-off, strategy is all about deciding what not to do as it is about deciding what to do. So both of these things become very, very relevant, what to do and what not to do, right? Okay, moving on. Now please understand, strategy is not just about the top management. So when we talk about strategy, it's not only about top management. Then who else will play a pivotal role when it comes to strategy? Both middle and lower level managers also have to work according to organization strategy. So it's the key responsibility of not only top management, but even middle and lower managers have to ensure that the organization is working as per the strategy. Meeting the objectives set by the strategy and observing the constraints. Constraint means whatever shortfalls or what all limited things that you have, you need to make sure that you attain your targets with the help of that. So middle and lower level managers have to work according to the organization strategies, meeting the objectives set by the strategy and observing the constraints. So you need to keep a watch of the constraints that you have. These managers should communicate the strategies to their teams. So how do you basically make sure that your middle and lower level managers are also able to comply to your strategies? First of all, by communicating the strategies to their teams, and this will help in achieving greater performance. Then only the people who are in operational level would exactly get to know what exactly is company expecting from them, and they are able to deliver that. If these managers are more convincing in interpreting these strategies. So the first and foremost thing is your managers in the lower and the middle level, they should be able to interpret the strategies rightly. So they should be able to communicate the strategies to their team, and eventually this will help in attaining what? Greater performance. If these managers, when will that happen? This will only happen if your middle and lower level managers are more convincing in interpreting these strategies, right? Okay. Now we have understood about strategy, its elements, competitive advantage, and what is strategy. Strategy is not just about the top management, it includes both middle and the lower level managers also. What exactly is strategy? Now strategy means basically it is derived from the word strategia. Strategia is what? Strategia means generalship, right? So Greek word, the definition of that is generalship. Strategy of an organization provides a basic framework through which organization will achieve its mission and objectives. We'll understand what exactly is mission in further topics, but the basic idea of a strategy of an organization is it provides a basic framework or a guideline through which an organization will be able to achieve its mission and objectives. So the two things that you got to remember is, first of all, achieving the mission and the objective, right? So that's what this strategy is all about. So basically it provides a basic framework. That's one thing you remember. How, for what? For organization to achieve its mission and the objectives, right? Sole objective of strategy is providing competitive advantage. So the objective of strategy, or the sole objective, the only objective of strategy is to provide a competitive advantage over its competitors, right? Okay. What are the characteristics of strategic or strategic decisions, right? Okay. I'm sorry. What is the characteristics of strategic or strategic decision? Okay. First of all, strategic decision is concerned with long-term direction of an organization. So when you talk about strategic decision, the first characteristic is that what exactly is the long-term direction of an organization. So basically it talks about the vision, right? What exactly is company trying to attain in the long-term horizon? right? So 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, this will all be based on the strategic decisions that a company make. So basically it's concerned with the long-term direction of an organization. It's trying to achieve some advantage over competition, right? So strategic decision basically will help you to get some kind of advantage or some kind of benefit with respect to your competitors. It's concerned with the scope of organization's activity. So what exactly or what purview the organization is working in. So it's basically concerned with the scope of organization activities. It matches the resources and activities to the environment in which it operates. So basically it is basically matching what? Matching two things. What? First of all, the resources and the activities. First is the resources and second the activities. With respect to what? With respect to the environment in which it operates. So two things are very, very important. You have to match the resources and the activities with respect to what? To the environment in which the organization is basically operating, right? Stretching an organization resources and competencies to create new opportunities or to capitalize on them. So whatever organizational resources or competencies that you have, you got to create new opportunities, or basically you should try to capitalize on that. Capitalize means you need to make the best out of it. That is called as capitalizing on something, right? Now, for example, if someone, in terms of cricket, if someone is playing well, he's already scored 50, he's well set on this, well set on the crease, then he should try to convert it into 100, right? Why? Because he is already set. That means he has the competency and he should try to capitalize on that. So reaching this 50 to 100 is basically capitalizing on something, right? It may require major resource changes for an organization. So with the help of resource change, the company can actually do well. So it may require, it's not mandatory, but it may require a major resource change for an organization. It is likely to affect operational decisions. Yes, that is one of the characteristics of strategic decisions, because if the situation changes, then your decision may also change. So it is likely to affect the operational decisions. Strategy is affected not only by the environment and resources availability, but it is also by the values and expectations of having the power in the organization. Right. So it's not just, strategy is not only all about environment and the resources that are available, but it is also affected by the value and the expectations of having the power in the organization. Right. Okay. Let's moving on, or rather we should revise it once, I feel. First, let's understand the characteristics of what? These are the characteristics of strategic or strategic decisions. First of all, it is concerned with what? Long-term direction of the organization. Secondly, trying to achieve some advantage over the competition. Then it talks about concerned with the scope of organization activities. Then you match the resources and activities to the environment in which it operates. Stretching an organization resources and competencies to create new opportunities or to capitalize on them may require major resource changes for an organization. It is also likely to affect the operational decision. And strategy is affected not only by the environment and the resource availability, but it is also by the values and expectations of having the power in the organization. That's grammatical error. So having the power in the organization. Right? Okay, moving on. What are the consequences of characteristics of strategy or strategic decisions? See, we in the last discussion, we understood the characteristics of strategic or strategic decisions. Now we are looking at what are the consequences of the characteristics or strategic decisions. Please remember, this all will start with word likely, right? Because it's a consequences. So if you implement a strategic decision, what is likely to happen, right? First of all, it may be likely to be complex in nature. So it may be not as simple as it sounds. It may be slightly complex in nature. It is likely to be made in situations of uncertainty. Uncertainty means what? Something which can happen out of the expectations. For example, there is some kind of war that is going on, or there is a certain spike in the inflation. So you got to change the strategies according to that. So basically you got to change, or one of the characteristic of strategic decisions, its consequences can be to be made in situations of uncertainty. Likely to demand an integrated approach. Integrated means consolidated or total approach. Like, okay, often involve change in organization. Yes, it can do that. There can be a change in the organization, and manage change relationships and network outside the organization. So you got to make sure, or you got to manage the relationships change within the organization and the networks which are outside the organizations, right? So what are the various consequences of characteristics of strategy or strategic decisions? First of all, they are likely to be complex in nature. They're likely to be made in situations of uncertainty. There is likely to demand an integrated approach, often involves change in the organization, and it manage change relationships and network outside the organizations. Manage change relationships, this happens within the organizations, and as far as the networks are concerned, it happens, you got to manage it outside the organizations, right? Okay. Now, business firms basically considers three types of strategy. Very, very important. What are these three types of strategy? First of all, we talk about corporate strategy, right? What exactly is corporate strategy? Strategy which is concerned with the overall purpose, scope of organization, and adding value to the different business units and product lines of the organizations, right? So what exactly is corporate strategy? Corporate strategy is basically something which is concerned with the overall purpose of the organization, scope of the organization, and adding value to the different business units and product lines of the organizations, right? So business units can be what? The units within the business, that is procurement, sales, finance, IT, whatever it is, and the product lines of the organization. So whatever products are there, if there are multiple products, so you basically got to develop a corporate strategies for that. So this is what is corporate strategy all about. So concerned with three things. First is overall purpose, scope of the organization, and adding value to two things. One is what? Different business units and product lines of the organizations. Now basically there are three pillars of corporate strategy. What are they? First is stability. Stability is what? You got to have a permanent feature, right? It should be stable in nature. There should not be a lot of ups and downs or a lot of volatility. Fine. Then there should be growth, right? And finally, there's something called as retrenchment. What do you mean by retrenchment? Retrenchment simply means reducing cost. So these are the three pillars of corporate strategy. First of all, you got to have a stability, you got to have a good growth, and then there should be retrenchment, right? Okay. Now decisions includes what all decisions? First of all, investment in diversification. So if you have to have a good corporate strategy, you got to take certain decisions. And what can be these decisions? First of all, investment in diversification. Then there can be a vertical integration. What do you mean by vertical integration? Vertical integration simply means a strategy where a company owns multiple stages of its supply chain, that is raw material to final distribution, right? So vertical integration simply means from raw material to final goods. If everything is being taken by the company, you develop a strategy where a company owns multiple stages of its supply chain, then it is called as a vertical integration. Then acquisitions is a part of it. New ventures can be a part of it. So this is all part and parcel of decisions that are included with respect to the corporate strategy, right? Let's move on to the second one. So the first one is corporate strategy. Second one is what? Second one is business strategy. What do you mean by business strategy? It simply means how to compete successfully in particular markets. International market, local market, domestic market. So if you need to know how to compete successfully in that case, the strategy that you adopt is called as a business strategy. But basically it does what? It basically helps to improve competitiveness of an organization, product or services in a specified industry or market segment catered by that business unit. Fine. So basically it helps you to improve the competitiveness of organization, product or services in a specified industry or market segment catered by that business unit. That's very obvious because it tells you exactly how to compete successfully in a particular market. So business strategy is all about competitiveness or improving competitiveness of an organization, product or service in a specified industry or market segment catered by the business unit. Now basically strategies are again divided into two categories, right? First is competitive and the second one is cooperative, right? Previously in corporate strategy we had three pillars, that is stability, growth and retrenchment. But when we talk about business strategy, we have two C's. Now what are these two C's? They are two categories which are competitive and the cooperative, right? Okay, let's come to the last one. The last one talks about functional strategy or operational level strategy, right? The plan that defines the goals for different departments within an organization with effective utilization of resources, processes and people. I hope you understand. That's very easy to understand also. A plan or basically a strategy that defines what? Goals for whom? Different departments within the organization. So something which tells you what IT is supposed to do, what finance is supposed to do, what sales is supposed to do, right? And you decide on these strategies for these particular departments. That is called as a functional strategy or an operational level strategy. How do you do it? With the effective utilization of resources, processes and people, right? Okay, it is basically concerned with what? It is concerned with developing and nurturing. Nurturing means growing, right? Developing and nurturing competence to provide a business unit with a competitive advantage. So basic idea of functional strategy is it is concerned with what? Concerned with developing and nurturing competence. Competence means how do you compete with each other to provide what? To make sure that a business unit has a competitive advantage, right? It is generally executed at functional level to maximize resource productivity. Right? It's very simple, right? We'll revise that once again. It's basically a plan that defines the goal for different departments within an organization. So the plans which defines the goals within an organization within different departments is called as functional strategy. How do you do that? You do it with effective utilization of resources, processes and people. What it is concerned with? It is concerned with developing and nurturing competence to provide a business unit with a competitive advantage, generally executed at a functional level to maximize resource productivity, right? Basically, organizations use all three types of strategies simultaneously. That means together, right? Three strategies, what are they? First of all, what is them? What are they? Business firms basically consider three types of strategy. So if a question asks you what exactly are three types of strategy, first one is corporate strategy. Corporate strategy is concerned with what? Overall purpose, scope of organization and adding value to different business units and product lines of the organization. They have three pillars. First is stability, growth and retrenchment. It includes certain decisions. Decisions regarding what? Investment in diversification, vertical integration, acquisitions or new ventures. Then the second one talks about business strategy. Business strategy is basically how do you compete or how does an organization compete successfully in a particular market. It basically helps you to improve the competitiveness of what? A product or services within a specified industry or a market segment catered by that business unit. Strategies basically are of two categories. One is competitive and the second one is cooperative, right? And finally, we spoke about what? Functional strategy, or what we call as operational level strategy. A plan that defines the goals for different departments within an organization with effective utilization of resources, processes and people. It's basically concerned with developing and nurturing competence to provide a business unit with a competitive advantage. It is basically executed at what level? At a functional level to maximize resource productivity, right? Organizations uses all these strategies simultaneously, right? Okay, now we come to one of the most important part, the second important part of the chapter, which is called as a strategic management. So till now we were focusing on strategy. Now we will learn about strategic management. Okay, what exactly is strategic management? It basically refers to a set of managerial decisions and actions, right, that determines the long-term performance of an organization. Very simple. Strategic management is what? It is, first of all, it refers to what? Managerial decisions and the actions. So two things you got to remember. First one is decision, second one is the actions. That determines what? That determines the long-term performance of an organization. It originally what was used to be called as corporate planning, right? But now it is called as a strategic planning. Why? Because the focus has shifted towards the competition of business environment, and competitive advantage has become the primary goal of the strategy, right? We already know that strategy talks about all what? It just talks about competitive advantage. Previously, the strategic management was called just as corporate planning, but now it has been rephrased as strategic planning. Why? Because your focus has more shifted towards the competition of the business environment, and competitive advantage has become the primary goal of the strategy, right? Okay, it basically consists of four elements. So strategic managements have four elements. Okay, first one is what? Environmental scanning. Second one is strategy formulation. Third one is strategy implementation, and fourth one is evaluation and control. So it's basically ESSE. That's how you can remember. It's easy, right? ES and SE, right? First of all is what? First of all, we learn about environmental scanning. Okay, what exactly is environmental scanning? Scanning means you got to know or you understand the environment in a better way. So basically, it refers to monitoring. First of all, you monitor, evaluating, and distribute information. So these are the three things which are key as far as environmental scanning is concerned. From internal and external environments to key people in the organization. So whatever monitoring, evaluation, and the distribution of information from where? From the internal and external environments, and you do it to whom? You do it to the key people in the organization, right? Key people means someone who's relevant to the organizations, right? This is to identify what? This is to identify strategic factors existing internally and externally. You got to identify the strategic factors existing within the organization and outside the organization. For what? For shaping the future of the organization. Why shaping the future? Because strategic management itself talks about the long-term growth of the organization, right? So that's where environmental scanning plays such a vital role. There are various methods and techniques available for scanning, right? What are the various methods for scanning? First of all, they can be formal, they can be systematic and intuitive methods, right? We'll read about that in detail, but right now you just need to understand what are the various methods and techniques. They can be either formal, systematic and intuitive methods. Intuitive, something which you can foresee, right? Which you can estimate. You just look at the various conditions and you try to understand what can happen in the future. So that's what is intuitive. Comes from the word intuition, right? So that's what it is, right? So basically there are three methods. What are they? These methods of scanning, there can be formal, systematic and intuitive method. Let's look at an example. Example can be a theoretical limit, envelopes, dynamic modes, mapping, unstructured or structured, expert opinion, etc. So what are the various ways of environmental scanning? They can be theoretical limit envelopes, dynamic modes, right? It can be theoretical limit envelopes, dynamic modes, mapping, unstructured or structured, expert opinion, right? Okay, so that's the first E, right? Second we come to S. S is what? S secondly is strategy formulation. Sorry, this is not formulation, this is formulation, right? Okay, now what exactly is strategy formulation? Formulation is, it basically refers to development of long range plans, right, for effective management, environmental OT. What is OT? OT is nothing but opportunities and threats. With respect to what? With respect to corporate SW. SW is what? SW is strength and weaknesses. So net strategy formulation is all about what? SWOT. SWOT you would have heard. SWOT analysis, that is strength, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, right? So basically strategy formulation is, it basically refers to development of long range plans. That means what exactly you intend to do with respect to the future, or rather attaining your plans for what? For effective management environmental OT. Management environmental OT is opportunities and threat with respect to what? Strengths and weaknesses. It includes what? It includes defining the mission, setting objectives, developing strategies and setting policy guidelines. So they are basically four things that you do in strategy formulation, right? First is you define the mission. What exactly is the mission of the organization? You set the objectives, fine. You develop the strategies and finally you set the policy guidelines, right? So basically strategy formulation refers to development of long range plans for effective management, environmental OT, that is opportunities and threat with respect to corporate strengths and weaknesses, includes defining the mission, setting objectives, developing strategies and setting policy guidelines, right? Okay, then we come to the third one, that is the second is, that is strategy implementation. So the first thing is you do the scanning, you do a formulation, then you do strategic implementation. What exactly is implementation? Process of implementation of strategies and policies through what? Through development of programs, budgets and procedures. This is called as strategy implementation, right? You have already formulated something, you got to implement it. How do you implement? You implement through the development of programs and budgets and procedures. It includes decision on resource allocation. So basically it includes what decisions are you taking for resource allocation and undertaken by middle and lower level management. So who undertakes these tasks? It's basically done by middle and lower level managers, and it's basically reviewed by the top level managers. It includes putting quality improvement program, market segmentation, changing the way the product is designed, expanding company through mergers and acquisition, and downsizing the company. Downsizing means reducing the size of the company, right? So basically strategic implementation is what? It's a process of implementation of strategies and policies. How do you implement the strategies? Through development of programs, budgets and procedures. It includes what? Decision on resource allocation, and which is undertaken by whom? Middle and lower level management, and it is reviewed by the top level managers. It includes what all activities? It includes putting quality improvement program, market segmentation, changing the way the product is designed, expanding company through mergers and acquisitions, or downsizing the company, right? Finally, E is what? Evaluation and control. So what exactly you got to evaluate and control? It involves process of monitoring organizational activities and performance. Evaluation is what? you got to see what exactly have you done, whether you have met the benchmark or not. So that's what is evaluation. So it basically involves the process of monitoring organizational activities and performances. So two things that you do in evaluation and control is you basically monitor the organizational activities and you evaluate the performance. Actual performance are compared to the desired ones, right? So whatever performances are there, you compare it to the desired. Desired is what? Nothing but benchmark. And corrective measures are taken to resolve the problem, and if there any problem exists, basically there are corrective measures that are taken to rectify that, right? So basically evaluation and control is, it basically involves processes of monitoring organizational activities and performances, and actual performance are compared to the desired ones. This process helps to identify weaknesses and fill the gaps in previously implemented strategic plan, and stimulates the entire process to begin again. So that's the basic idea of evaluation control. So it basically ensures that if there is any weakness that is being identified, and if there is any gap which is existing in previously implemented strategic plan, that is being rectified, and it stimulates the entire process to begin again, right? So four things. First is environmental scanning, that is E. Then S, that is strategic formulation. Again there is S, that is implementation, and finally you do evaluation and control. What it is all about, it's basically basic four elements of strategic management, right? Let's come to the last part of the chapter. The last part of the chapter talks about red ocean strategy and blue ocean strategy, right? Okay, what exactly is red ocean strategy? Red ocean strategy is nothing but industries existing in today's world, that is the known market space. So red ocean strategy has to do with the existing market, right? So there are basically industries which are existing in the today's world, which is the known market space, right? The industry, I would rather repeat it, industries existence in today's world, whichever industries that are existing in today's world, right? So basically it's a known market space, that is red ocean strategy. Here industries boundaries are defined, so you know within what boundaries you are supposed to work, and companies try to outperform their rivals to get a greater share of the existing market, right? For example, simple can be that of say Instagram and Facebook, right? That's something which we all use and we can correlate it to. So this is all part of red ocean strategy. Why? Because say for example, these are the industries or these are the companies which are existing in today's world, right? So this is a known market space. So you know the market of Insta, you know the market of Facebook. There are certain boundaries within which they have to work, and companies try to outperform. So they try to outperform each other. How? By competing with each other. I guess they are from the same but just for an example purpose I'm telling you, their rivals to get a greater share of existing market. So you try to get a bigger market share when you compare both, right? Now cutthroat competition turns the ocean bloody red, hence it is called as red ocean. Why it is called as red ocean? Because there is a cutthroat competition. There's a cutthroat competition between Insta and FB. You have to have a good share of the social media. So there's the cutthroat competition. So Insta is trying to better FB, whereas FB is trying to better Insta. But because it turns out to be very competitive in nature, and there's a cutthroat competition rather. Remember this word, cutthroat competition. Hence it is called as a red ocean strategy, or it turns out to be bloody red. Hence it is called as a red ocean. I hope you understand this. So what exactly is blue ocean then? Blue ocean is industries that are not existing in today's world. That is the unknown market space. So the known market space is what? No market space becomes a red ocean strategy or a part of red ocean strategy. Whereas when it is unknown, it is called as a blue ocean. It's basically unexplored and untapped by the competition. So no one has got into that space and no one has tried to tap it. So basically that becomes a blue ocean. Now why it is called as a blue ocean? Because like a blue ocean, it is vast, deep and powerful in terms of opportunities and profitable growth, right? So it's a very big topic. It's given as a big topic in your book, but I've tried to trim it down so that it's easy for you to remember. So two strategies are red ocean strategy and blue ocean strategy. Red ocean strategy is basically with respect to the industries that are existing in the today's world. That is the known market space. Here industries boundaries are defined and companies try to outperform their rivals to get a greater share of the existing market. Cutthroat competition turns the ocean bloody red, hence it is called as a red ocean. Whereas when you talk about blue ocean, they are not the ones which are existence in today's world, but in the market space. That means they are very unexplored and untapped by the competition. But like a blue ocean, it is very vast, deep and powerful in terms of what? In terms of opportunity and profitable growth. Your book beautifully has explained the differences between both red ocean and blue ocean strategy. This table, if you refer to, that should be more than sufficient for you to understand this topic, right? We'll quickly go through it. A red ocean strategy, basically you compete in existing market. This we have already read. Whereas when you talk about blue ocean strategy, it create uncontested markers to serve. That means you can say it's something which is very unexplored or untapped, right? You board the competition. Board the competition means you sail through the competition. That means there are many players, but you have to compete with each other. Whereas it makes the competition more irrelevant. Why irrelevant? Because it's an unexplored place, so there is no competition as such. Then when with respect to red ocean strategy, it exploit the existing demand. So whatever demand is there, you try to get a better market share of that. Whereas in case of blue ocean strategy, you create and capture a new demand. Now you make the value cost trade-off, whereas you break the value cost trade-off. Now what is value cost trade-off? Value cost trade-off is nothing but basically you choose the idea between creating value for customers at a higher cost or creating reasonable value at a lower cost, right? So value cost trade-off is nothing but you basically try to create value for the customers at a higher cost or creating reasonable value at a lower cost, right? So in terms of red ocean strategy, you try to make the value cost trade-off, whereas in case of blue ocean strategy, you break the value cost trade-off. And finally, you align the whole system of firms' activities with its strategic choices of differentiation or lower cost. Whereas in case of blue ocean strategy, you align the whole system of firms' activities in pursuit. Pursuit means you try to chase of differentiation and low cost. So these are the key differences between red ocean strategy and blue ocean strategy. Not very important, but I guess there may be a probability that they may ask you in the exam. So for that, I have covered that in your topic, right? So this is all about the first chapter, that is 8.1. If you really like this content, please comment so that I may continue to make such videos so that you are benefited. And if you like this topic, do press the like button, share with your friends, and do subscribe to our channel, right? Thank you and happy learning.